All right, so how's everybody doing? Can I have a shout? How's everyone doing? It's too quiet. What time is it? 4:56. Let's give a little shout. How's everybody doing? Thank you, Po. Thank you. All right. So what I plan to do today is, I don't plan to take too much of your time, but I plan to talk to you about a fundamental problem that we see. We see this problem in life. We see this problem in security. The problem is distraction. Too much noise. Too many things to do. Too many WhatsApp messages. Too many blind spots. Too many attack vectors. The problem is we have attack vectors or technology advancements increasing, and we have the people who can help us secure decreasing. So we have a lot more technology that we are adopting every day, but we have a lot lesser skilled resources that we have to help us protect, defend, stay secure. So the number over here are just not for the sake of showing numbers, right? Usually presenters like putting some numbers, 2 by 3, 1 by 3, 97%, it looks nice. But the numbers over here in this slide tells a story. Closely look at these numbers and you'll be able to relate it not just to my presentation, but also to all the other presenters who presented before me. Like I said, these numbers tell a story. So if you look at the first number, 67%, if you look at the second number, 83%, 97%, 71%, what are these? This is the plight of defenders. This is the trouble, the monumentous task of safeguarding enterprises that defenders face. This report is from Palo Alto and from Vectra, 2 reports. We'll be happy to share these reports with you. But the point over here is a lot of analysts who are working in security operation centers, the blue team cyber defenders, they are overwhelmed with noise. They are overwhelmed with the amount of alerts. They're overwhelmed with false positives. How many of you have actually suffered from false positives? I have suffered multiple times. Now, the problem with false positive is it gives you, or it puts you in a chase that is silly. Because you start chasing something which is not really existing, but you actually end up not looking at things which could be a ransomware, an insider threat, a malware. A lot of problems. And this is why, if you look at the last statistics, 71%, they're uncertain. And forget about the numbers. The numbers, I was never a fan of mathematics. I ended up in cybersecurity, specializing in encryption, but I was never a fan of mathematics. If you leave the number for a second, the bigger problem, ask yourself, the bigger problem is we are not sure what we're detecting, what we're investigating, is that the real threat? Or have somebody already been breached and the threat actors are already inside? In security, especially in OT, we call it as sleeper cells. In sleeper cells, what basically they do is they're already embedded deep inside, maybe as part of supply chain attacks, but these threat actors are already inside, these malware are already inside waiting for the instruction to be activated. So these numbers tell a story, right? These are not numbers for the sake of putting these numbers. But why do we have these numbers? The problem is, when you start looking at everything, when you start looking at different technologies, when you start looking at a typical enterprise, a government organization, a bank, a financial organization, an e-commerce company, manufacturing company, the problem is you have way too many attack surfaces. You have way too many things and areas to protect. You have way too many solutions. Some of those solutions are super solid. The problem is not how good or bad a solution is in silos. The problem is, all in all together, how do they work? How do they actually help tell our investigators, our SOC analysts, our CISOs a story? How do they actually help find that real threat instead of putting you in a chase to something that is really useless? So, if you see over here, what we do in Vectra is, we started as a network detection and response organization. Before that, we were into intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system, but we started realizing that working in silos, looking at attacks in silos is not going to help. So what we started doing is we started aggregating. We started looking at data. But that's just data. A data without context, a data without information enveloped around it is meaningless. If I just throw a number, 55, what does that number even mean to you if I don't give you context? So the first step over here is collecting all the data. But then after we have collected the data, we start applying machine learning and AI models. Now, in this short talk, I can't get into the depth of what those models are and how they actually work. More than happy to go into the detail of those models with you. But what we are basically doing is we collect all of these data, and depending on the data type, we have different models. For cloud, it's a different model. For SaaS application, different models. For network, different model. For virtual networks, different model. And for containers, different models, because the threat in all of these surfaces are different. So you can't have a Band-Aid ripped across or pasted across different attack surfaces. In security, no matter what solution, forget Vectra, forget ABC, whatever the solution is, there are few things which are very important. The first is coverage. The first is coverage, right? It's not just in security, even when you're building your infra, even when you're building your application, even when you're building a mobile app, coverage. What do you want to cover? So once you have the coverage, the second is clarity. This is important in security. You have coverage, you have data, but data without context is just noise. If I give you a lot of data and you don't know what the data means, it's just noise. What we don't want in life is noise. So, along with coverage, clarity is very important, which gives you context, which tells you this is the problem, this is why this problem happens, this is how you fix this problem, right? So coverage and clarity are very important. But if I move forward, let's take an example. How does this coverage and clarity really help? So this snapshot that you see over here is from our dashboard, and we have tried to simulate an attack. Now, a lot of times, what you see is a lot of solutions, principles, vendors talking to you about detections, alert. But let me change that a little. Alerts and detection are important, but the most important is context and prioritization. You might have 100 alerts, you might have 10 alerts, you might have 5 alerts, you might have 50 alerts. Which one should your SOC team look into? Which device, which identity, which SaaS application, which Kubernetes cluster should they be looking into, right? So what we start doing is, we have different attacks, the attacks get correlated, but essentially, and we can block at any point in time, we can contain the attacks, but for the sake of this slide, let's say even if a threat actor bypasses all the controls, move forwards, we see everything, because we're collecting data from multiple areas. We can integrate with third parties, we can collect network data or network telemetry, endpoint telemetry, we can collect telemetry from SaaS application, from cloud providers, identity providers, etc. And we start prioritizing. A device, an identity, a Kubernetes cluster, a pod, an instance, whatever it is, once it is prioritized, you know which one do you have to look into, right? So we start prioritizing. The next time, even if you don't take away anything from this presentation, that's okay. But one thing which I really want you as a security architect consultant is, I want you to take away to start asking and looking into prioritization. You have attacks, you have detections, how do those get prioritized? So what we are trying to basically tell you is, you might want to have different solutions in silos. That's not going to help. They don't tell a story. You do not want to be in a situation where you're looking at multiple screens. And maybe that's the reason why we have the smartphones. Our email application, WhatsApp, internet, everything is on a single device, very convenient. So what you need is to make life a little convenient, yet effective, yet efficient for your SOC analyst, for your cybersecurity defenders. So what we do in Vectra is we have a platform that collects multiple types of data. All that data that is collected, be it from the telemetry directly or be it from third-party sources, that data is just data. You collect that data, you normalize that data, but then what we do is we start applying machine learning models. And I'm not just standing over here and saying machine learning as a fancy word. When I say machine learning model, we really mean it. For example, if you look up MITRE Defend, right? MITRE Defend framework, Vectra has 12 patents referenced in MITRE ATT&CK. So it's not we referencing and mapping to MITRE. MITRE has referenced Vectra patents in MITRE Defend. All those 12 patents are machine learning patents. So it's not us standing here and saying that the MITRE Defend, we map to MITRE Defend, but MITRE Defend has actually called out our AI models. And like I said, I don't have enough time to get into the details of those models. More than happy to go into the details. But the machine learning is applied across all of the data sources. Now, if you want to import your threat intel, you can do that. If you additionally want to import signatures, your SNOT rules, Yara rules, your Suricata rules, along with machine learning, happy. You can absolutely do that, not a problem. What happens once you import, and this is quite important. So if you are messaging, again, distraction, right? My first slide was distraction. I see a lot of distraction here. So if you're distracted, again, one thing that you might want to look into is, you have all of this data. What we do with this data is, we then start applying machine learning models, etc., looking at the signatures, but then we start prioritizing. We start telling you what is urgent, what do you need to look immediately, and what can wait. Because if you know what need to be looked into immediately and what can wait, a lot of attacks can be stopped at very early stages, right? So this is what we basically are doing. And this brings me to the third pillar over here. Now, when you have coverage, which is visibility, when you have clarity, clear context, information, and with these two elements, it is relatively easy. It is relatively easy to control the threats. You can't control a threat if you have zero context. So context is very important. So the control pillar or the response pillar, I see it heavily abused, just like machine learning. I see control, response, containment heavily abused by not just defenders, not just by cyber security vendors, mostly by us, everybody in the security industry. So when we talk about response, the response can only happen once you have the right coverage, right clarity, because otherwise what you'll end up doing is, you'll end up taking an action on a false positive, right? And shutting down your operations. And we have seen that happen in ASEAN. So you do not want to do that. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with is, a lot of solution providers call this as extended detection and response, fancy names. The whole point over here is, forget about the fancy names. The key goal is, you need to have context of all the data that you have. You need to have visibility. And the data that you have, you should be able to look that data into wherever you want. Like you want to look into that data and insights in Vectra user interface? Sure. You want to look into that data in your SIM? Sure. You want to look that data in your SOAR or your third-party XDR? Sure. Or you want that data to be imported by third party for automation? Sure. That data is important, because if you have the right data, how and where you want to see the data is up to you. We want to democratize the data. It's not just our proprietary data. At the end of the day, it's your data. We're just providing insights on that data. We are giving you the capability to respond, but wherever you want to look at that data, that signal, that information, those detections is your choice. You have the right to choose. You have the right to select. And if you are like, you know what? Network, identity, Microsoft 365, whatever, all these threats, I want everything to be shown on a single UI. I do not want this data to be sent to my SIM or third party. No problem. Look into this, into our UI. We have a very nice user interface. You can look everything into our interface. Now, one thing over here that you see, network and M365, this journey, this threat was actually seen. By the way, I saw this, a threat actor moving from network to M365 in Thailand last month. But this is also something which we saw by the APT threat actor by the name Nobelium, that was after, that was behind SolarWinds, Sunburst, SolarGate, however you want to call that, attack, a supply chain attack. So out of the 18,000 victims, the victims that were having M365 using Golden SAML, the threat actor Nobelium actually pivoted from on-prem network onto M365. Now imagine if you have a disjointed solutions. There are good security solutions for M365. There are good solutions for your enterprise network and for your endpoint, but there's a gap. You have network, you have endpoint, You have your identity and domains on-premises, and then you have Microsoft 365 and Azure AD SaaS. You have two different solutions, two different information. That makes it really, really complex. So I hope you were able to see some value today, but at any point in time you have any questions, you can approach Vectra. Think of us as your friendly Spider-Man, right? Vectra is like a Spider-Man. You can just contact us, and if you don't like Spider-Man, you like Batman, He-Man, Wonder Woman, whosoever, we'll be that for you, right? You name it, we'll be that. But with this thought, I'll bid you goodbye. We'll be downstairs. Please feel free to connect with us, ask us any questions. Happy to answer. All right. Ciao. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Sharat, and for that enlightening talk on how to use AI as a security solution. You know, I, for one, am not as intimidated by AI anymore. So thank you for that, Sharat. Now, to give you a more detailed visualization, let's see this infograph. Okay, so as Mr. Sharat Nautiyal mentioned, we make integrating attack signal at speed and scale simple. Now that is nice, isn't it? Okay, so ASI is attack signal intelligence. It reduces risks of data breaches, reduces cost of security, improves compliance, and improves efficiency of security operations. Now, there's another one, more technology to utilize, but lesser people to help us defend. So no more alerts, no more false positive, no more stress, no more uncertainty. And I believe everybody deserves that kind of stress-free environment. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Sharat Nautiyal.